All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this RMS Support Center release brown bag training. Today, we're going to be reviewing the updates and fixes made in the upcoming patch release. That patch number is going to be 495. It's targeted to be that at least. It does have the potential to change. This patch is targeted to be released on August 22nd, which will be this Thursday afternoon. If you experience any issues downloading the new patch, please don't hesitate to contact the help desk. There's a link to our ticketing system in Jira and a phone number that you can call listed on the references slide of this presentation. The slides for this presentation can be found on our website, rms.usace.army.mil. That link can also be found on the references slide. These slides will be updated to include any Q&A that occurs during this presentation today, and this presentation is also being recorded. So the video for today will be posted on our YouTube channel. We also have demos recorded and linked at the end of this presentation in the references slide as well. Those will be added to the most updated slides. Actually, I think they should be available already. The most updated slides should be available on our website, rms.usace.army.mil. So keep an eye out for the video of this training. It's going to be posted within about 5 business days following today. If you know someone who couldn't attend, or if you'd just like to be able to reference back to it, that video will be made available on YouTube and listed on the RMS website. If you have any questions regarding anything we cover today, please type that question into the Q&A section of this WebEx. We will have some RMS Support Center folks on standby to take care of those as they come in. We will also open up the floor for discussion at the end of the presentation. So if you'd like to just wait until the end and unmute to ask your question, you'll have the opportunity to do that as well. So let's get started. Here are the topics we'll cover today. We have a quick fix to review for revision history, and then we'll look at a fix for user roles and document packages. After that, we'll look at progress payments and contract changes under finances. Then we'll review some updates and fixes made to the Transmittal Log. And finally, we'll look at an update to the real property module under the Closeout tab, and a fix for the Submittal Register ENG 4288 report in contract reports. Once we complete the presentation portion of this training, we'll close out with a demonstration of the Transmittal recall update that we'll review here shortly before we move on to the discussion portion. So first up is a fix for revision history. In some cases, the revision history wasn't updating immediately upon the change being made to the item in whichever area this was occurring. You'd have to leave the screen and come back at a minimum for those changes to show up. This has been fixed, and now the revision history updates are going to appear immediately instead of having to exit and re-enter the screen or even the contract to get those changes to appear. Next is user roles. We had an error that was occurring when attempting to add or edit any user roles in either the user roles module in the contract selection view in contractor mode, or in the contract user roles module from the district office menu in government mode. So each of those areas, you couldn't add or edit a user role. You were presented with this error shown here instead. You could still access the actual modules, but when attempting to add a user role or select one to edit, this error would be presented and you couldn't move beyond this. So this error has been resolved, and user roles can be added or edited as needed in both of those areas. Okay, moving on to document packages. The delete button on the document packages that can be deleted. Some document packages can't be deleted. But on the ones that can be deleted, the delete button didn't seem to be working, even if the user attempting to delete had the appropriate read and write permissions. This was also occurring whether the document packages were empty or not. The delete button seemed to result in no action. This has been corrected, and the delete button will work as it should now when it is active. And when you select to delete a document package, the pop-up shown here is going to appear to confirm the deletion. Next up, we'll look at finances, starting with progress payments. So with a previous release, we added the CFM's accruals and obligation payment status columns. So this one and this one. And with that update, the obligations with any CFM's accruals would be highlighted in this tab in progress payments. So the update is that only those obligations with accruals that total an amount that's greater than the available for earnings column, as shown here in this example, only those obligations will be highlighted to call attention to it moving forward, instead of just any obligation with accruals. Next is another update to progress payments. The return for corrections capability in government mode is now going to be available all the way up until the payment has been sent to CFMs. However, the payment cannot be fully or partially approved in CFMs for the return for corrections to be available. This is just an addendum onto the current return for corrections functionality that's already available for payments. It can now just reach right beyond the approvals performed in RMS. Returning a payment in RMS is only going to be available up until the payment has been sent to CFMs, but not after it's been partially or fully approved in CFMs. So after a payment is sent to CFMs from RMS and before any approvals occur in CFMs, the payment can be returned to the contractor for corrections. Once that button is clicked, the payment will be sent back to the contractor as shown in the bottom right here. As always, when returning a payment, please make sure to communicate any necessary corrections needed for the payment to the contractor when returning. Next in finances is for contract changes. In the Change Request Package tab, supporting documents can be added here using the Add menu as shown. And with a previous release, the PNM and POM options that were in this Add menu were removed. So the update is that those have been added back here and are available in that Add menu. When a PNM or a POM document is created and added to the change, it's going to be placed in the document package for the change request. Okay, moving on to submittals and the transmittal log. We have a pretty significant update here. The recall transmittal button has been added for completed transmittals in government mode. So as shown here on the slide, the transmittal has been reviewed by the government and sent back to the contractor. It is pending contractor acknowledgement. But let's say something was missed in the government review. So when going back into the transmittal after it's been accepted by the government, this new recall transmittal button will become active and available. That can be used for getting the transmittal back into government review so that any fixes or updates can be made on the government's part. We will be demonstrating this update after we finish reviewing all of the updates and fixes in this patch. But for now, when this button is clicked, another screen will appear so that a reason for the recall can be entered. That entry will be required for the recall to be completed and, of course, for tracking purposes. So once that's done, the transmittal will be placed back into in review. So the second part to this update is when a recall is performed on a transmittal, that's going to be recorded as a recall in the revision history for the transmittal. If you click on the recall revision of the transmittal, it's going to pull up the version of the transmittal just before it was recalled. So the contractor signed and submitted transmittal before the QA codes and signatures were applied to the ENG 4025, apologies, I misspoke a second ago, will be presented. So in this view also, the recall comments button is available, and that if you click on that button, it's going to bring up the window with the recall reason entered during the recall. Please keep in mind that this is not a return to the contractor for corrections. QA codes can be used for that purpose. This capability is to recall the transmittal back to the government from the contractor. An additional note is that there's no limit on how many times a transmittal can be recalled. Each time a transmittal is recalled, a new document package will be created for each new completion of the transmittal. So if you recall a transmittal twice more after its initial completion, there will be a total of 3 document packages on the transmittal. If the recall is performed on a fully completed transmittal, with the original document package having been completed and sent to PCF already, then that document package is going to be locked down for any edits. So any edits or signatures applied to the ENG 4025 during that recall will only be added to the active document package. One last thing to mention before we move on. The transmittal recall button will not be available for any transmittals that have been submitted before the release of this patch. So even if a transmittal is in the completed transmittals area of the transmittal log, if it was done before the release of this patch, the recall transmittal button will not be available. That's only going to be for new transmittals submitted after this patch is released. Okay, next up, also in the transmittal log, is for the date sent to contractor field. Previously, this field could be altered, and now the date sent to contractor can't be entered or edited. If changes are required on a transmittal after it's been sent to the contractor, instead of removing this date and allowing fields to be active again, the recall transmittal button can be used for this purpose instead. And as I mentioned previously, we will be demonstrating that at the conclusion of this presentation. All right, there was also an issue that was occurring with how transmittals were how submittal items were displaying on the ENG 4025 report. So when submittal items were added to a transmittal out of the usual numerical order, those items were showing on the 4025 report in the order that the items were actually added instead of the correct numerical order as shown up here in the application. So here in the application, it's showing in numerical order 62, 63, 64 by the item number. However, in the report, we can see by the description of the submittal item, 62 was added first, 64 was added second, 65 was added third, and 63 was added fourth. This should not be the case. They should just display in numerical order as they do in the application. And so that's been corrected. And the submittal items in a transmittal are going to display in the ENG 4025 in numerical order by the item number, regardless of how they were added to the transmittal. Okay, our last item to review for the transmittal log is a fix for how the transmittal document package was handling exceptions during the signing of the ENG 4025 that already existed in the document package. So it wasn't during creation and signing of the ENG 4025. The ENG 4025 already existed. And if an exception occurred either due to interrupted communications or other network issues during signing, the unsigned ENG 4025 would occasionally be deleted from the document package, even though it already existed there before signing was even attempted. That's been corrected. When an exception occurs during the signing on an ENG 4025 that already existed in the document package, The ENG 4025 will not be removed. It's the unsigned version will stay there, but it will remain unsigned. So if you experience an exception or an error during signing, go ahead and double check and make sure that it went through and retry if it did not. Moving on to the Closeout tab, specifically the Real Property module. The category codes available for selection in this field on the Real Property Item Edit view have been updated to have the latest and most recent codes. And along with that update was the addition of the Washington Headquarters Services, or WHS, branch of service codes. These codes were also updated in the Category Codes and Units module within the System Library as well in Government mode. Next, our final set to review is for contract reports. So when running the Submittal Register ENG 4288 report from the Contract Reports module, selecting a grouping option, any of these options aside from the section option, resulted in the specification section headers to be missing completely from the report. That has been fixed. The specification section headers have been restored, so whenever a grouping option other than the section option is used, when running this report, the specification section headers will still show up in the report as shown here. We're using the contractor option and the specification sections are showing up still. Okay, that concludes our presentation portion of the training today. Here are some links we found to be helpful. We have the legacy revision history we recorded for our previous training, as well as a link to our previous brown bag. And we also have some recorded demonstrations for the progress payments, return for corrections update, the PNM and POM update for change requests, and the transmittal recall. Although if you stay tuned now, we will be turning it over for that live demo in a second. We also have the usual links at the bottom for our website and YouTube channel, and also the JIRA Service Desk link and phone number to get in touch with our help desk, and finally, the KM portal link. And with that conclusion, I'll turn it over for the in-app demonstration.
I'm going to go through a real quick presentation on what it looks like now when you recall a transmittal on the government side. I've got contractor mode up on the left-hand side, government mode opened up on the right-hand side. Keep in mind, up at the top left-hand corner is my patch version. So I'm running a pre-release 495 on some test data. So this is not live production yet. Again, we're planning to release on Thursday if everything goes well. So once you guys get 495, you'll be able to do this. So I went into contractor mode, set up a submittal item. I linked it to a transmittal. I sent that transmittal off to the government. So you'll notice the little blue bar underneath transmittals in review. We have sent off transmittal number 18 to the government. So on the government side over here, I have in review the transmittal from the contractor side. So what we're going to do is we're going to act as if the government has already received the transmittal from the contractor side, and we're going to fill out that transmittal. So on the government side, we have remarks to the contractor, QA code of B, and we're going to say something like, make sure you do ABC. So, just putting in some government remarks. These are the remarks from the contractor. They're obviously grayed out. The date set to contractor is grayed out because that will be completed once we apply the QA code to the 4025. Those of you that have used RMS, you know that there's two ways to apply the QA code to the 4025. You can do it automatically or you can do it manually. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here, apply the QA code, and we're going to automatically do it. So when we click this button, it's going to create the 4025, put it in the document package, send it back to the contractor. So I'm going to do that right now. Click that up, I get my pin request, and it will go through, sign the document, put it in the transmittal, put it in the document package, send it off to the contractor. So those of you that are watching my screen, you probably noticed I said I did a QA code of B. However, I put a QA code of A. And then I said, make sure you do ABC. So let's pretend you went home for the day, you backed out, you left for the day, and you went home. Next morning, the contractor comes in, they open up their contract. So both the contractor and the government come in, we go to submittals, we go to transmittal log. Obviously, there's nothing in review. And number 18 should be in the pending contractor acknowledgement. So when the contractor opens this up, they notice, hey, there's a QA code of A. It should be a QA code of B. So they call up the government and tell them, hey, did you mean to give me a QA code of A? Or there may be no communication between the government and contractor. The government may have acknowledged this immediately. So say, maybe we didn't go home and we noticed it right away. It's like, oops, I forgot to add some comments. I also gave the wrong QA code. Notice this little button up here in the top left-hand corner, recall transmittals. One of the things to keep in mind is we want to keep a system of record. So at the bottom of transmittals, if you scroll all the way down, you're going to see a revision history. So you're going to see the submission of the transmittal. You're going to see the acceptance of the transmittal on the government side. Obviously, because I'm the one on both contractor mode and government mode, it's going to have my name on both. So that's why there's my name on both. Probably won't be that case for you guys when you're using RMS. But keep in mind, every single time I go through and I do any action, whether it's a submission, a recall, an acceptance, a finalizing, it's going to do a revision history. So now I'm going to say, okay, well, obviously I messed up. I don't really want to go in here and do a resubmittal on this because this was my mistake. I'm going to recall the transmittal. So it's going to say, hey, I'll give you a little bit of a warning message. Hitting the recall button will revert the 4025 to the state to when the contractor signed it. Keep in mind, this is not sending it back to the contractor for corrections. This is the government putting it back into government review. So we're going to hit yes, we want to do that. In so doing, I have to put a reason in here. QA code, additional comments. So I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to record my name in the database and require me to sign. Now, if you've used your CAT card pin recently, it's not going to ask you to do your CAT card pin. But if you haven't done it recently, it'll ask you to do your CAT card pin just to create a record in the database of when this happens, so that anybody who does this, it's in stone when it comes back. So now notice the transmittal is now back into pending contractor acknowledgement. So if I back out of here and say I'm the contractor and I look into this transmittal, go to Submittals, Transmittal Log, notice it's now back into review on government review, right? This is not contractor review because contractors, they do draft transmittals. So now we can go in here and we can say, also make sure you do XYZ. And let's go in here and let's fix this QA code. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to hit B. And now I can go in here and reapply the QA code. So I'm going to do that right now. Yes. Sign my CAT card. Do my CAT card pin rather. So it puts it in there. Notice there's a second copy of the document package. There's going to be a system of record. So it's not like you can go in here and not saying anyone would do this, but it's not like you can go in here and pretend that you didn't do something or, try to make a mistake go away. There's going to be a system of records. So now when I go in here and I open this up, should have the B on there. Yep, there's the B on the action code. So there we go. There's the 4025. There's the document package. Keep in mind, RMS. One of the big questions that we got was RMS right now is not sending to PCF. It's going to be, but what RMS does have, it has a batch process in the background that constantly sends documents to PCF. So one of your questions are going to be, well, what happens if it already sends it off to PCF? Well, it's going to resend it off to PCF whenever you make a change. Don't worry about the previous one. It's going to send it off. You can't delete it. It's going to be a system of record, but at least the latest one will be the corrected copy. So what I'm going to do now is notice at the revision history here, I have a recall now. So originally the contractor submitted it. I accepted it as the government. I recalled it and I re-accepted it, right? Because I went in and recreated it. So now I'm going to back off of this transmittal. And this transmittal is now pending contractor acknowledgement. So the contractor, say you go home, they come back in, Contractor's going to come in and check their transmittals. It's going to be pending contractor acknowledgement. So note, one of the questions that we get to from government users is the contractor able to see the history? Yes, they are. They are able to see the history. Also, keep in mind too, on the government side, here's what it looks like when I open up the recall history. So if I open up the recall history on the government side, we have the this is the recall right here. And let's see here, we go to the accept. Go. All right. So that's the recall. Keep in mind when you open up these recall tabs down here, it's going to show on the title at the top. So I'm going to open this up real quick again so you guys can see up here. There is a history of the recall up at the very top. So keep that in mind when you're opening that up. That'll let you know whether or not you're on the actual one or not. So I'm going to back out again. Go back out all the way. Picture the government coming back in just to show you guys where the transmittal is. Right here, pending contractor acknowledgement. So it's still there. So the contractor can come in, work on this transmittal, and date it and send it off, and then complete it. So the contractor comes in here, completes it off, and there we go. We got the completed transmittal. So that's what the recall looks like. Now, keep in mind, he said when you open up an old transmittal, I think all of these were created with a new one, so it's probably not a good show. Yeah, because recall button is there. If the recall button does not work for you and it's grayed out, it's probably because you opened up a transmittal that was created before 495. So keep in mind, when the contractor creates a transmittal in 495, it will then show the recall button and you can go in and recall it. Also keep in mind, you can do it on the completed transmittals tab as well. So let's see here. Go. So on this one, all these 000001 dash transmittals, we've all tested this in the latest version. So I can go in here on the completed transmittal and recall it. And this one already has a recall because we've been testing this out over the last month with the UAT users. So the recall can be on pending contractor acknowledgement and on the completed side. But keep in mind, it does not send it back to contractor for corrections, and it creates a record in the database, and it only works on transmittals created as of 495. So that is the presentation on transmittals, or on the recall transmittal button. It will hopefully, one of the RMS has been allowing users to return for corrections on other modules. Transmittals are a little bit different because we have the ability to resubmit a transmittal and the need for it to be a system of record, right? So we know exactly what's going on the government side. So that revision history helps keep that. But if the government makes a mistake without having to leave that on record and do a resubmittal on that, now the government can go in and correct the QA code, correct comments, upload more documents to the document package. Keep in mind, you don't have to do that automatic signing of the QA code. If your district requires you to have a wet signature, which there are some districts that do that, you can sign, scan it in, upload it to RMS, and be good to go there. And I think that's all. Let me stop sharing my screen. We'll hand it back. If there's any questions, please let us know.
Is there any kind of stamp on the old one?
Say that one more time, please.
When you say stamp, are you talking about the revision history?
No, I guess on the old document. So it's keeping the original, maybe I should say the original document, and then you're doing the recall and you're creating a new one. So on that original old one, is there a stamp going over top of that so that we know if somebody inadvertently opens that instead of the latest one, that it's not current on the old one?
Inside of the document package, when you recall and you do the new signing, it creates a brand new document package. So that old document package isn't touched at all. On the left-hand side, when you open up the column, there's a document created date that includes the time. So that's what you want to look at. So for example, if you change the QA code, it'll go on to a brand new document package. And the one at the top is the most recent one. So that's kind of the key. So you get the 1, 2, and 3. Those will be the previous ones.
Yeah. I guess I was just kind of hoping there'd be some kind of overstamp on the old ones so we don't get those confused.
Got it. That's a good question. That might be a version like 1.1 on this. That might actually be a good idea because
the problem with that is that once it's been signed, it's now a signed document and it can't be altered without having to go back through a signature process.
Hmm.
And also, if it's been sent to PCF, we'd end up sending multiple copies of the same document. And so it's something that we kicked around. We tried to figure out a solution for, and we couldn't come up with a real good one. And we didn't want to come up with something that was really bad. It's something we're still on our mind to think about, and we're going to, we'll keep looking into it, try to find a way to do it. But as of right now, yeah, the old ones we can't go back in and make alterations to.
Yeah. I guess I'd be less concerned about what's going to PCF versus what the contractor and the current government users are seeing in RMS. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
So when you recall a transmittal, then it's incumbent upon the field or whoever's administering the contract to have communicated that to the contractor so they know they have to resubmit. Is that kind of the thought process here?
The idea is when you do the recall button, it only sends it back to the government. So the contractor there's nothing the contractor can do with it. If there's anything that the contractor has to do, you want to code the submittal as a resubmittal. So when I do a recall, it only recalls it from my completion. So I can go back in and change what I did as the government. So I'm pretending to be the government here, right? So the contractor doesn't need to know anything in terms of, you probably want to communicate with them and let them know, hey, I screwed up on this transmittal. I meant to add these document packages. If you do it right away, it really doesn't matter, right? There is a system of record so that, there's nothing nefarious going on, right? But at the same time, if you do it right away, from their perspective, when they log in the next morning or the next hour or whatever, they'll see a completed transmittal waiting for them. If you do it the next day, it may go from completed transmittals to pending contractor acknowledgement where they have to put the date in if it's completed. That's the only thing the contractor would have to do is put the date in there saying, I acknowledge the completion of this transmittal. I hope that helps answer your question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Sweet.
So there are a couple of questions inside of the chat that I would like to discuss. So there are two questions actually referring to this for RFIs, whether or not we're going to have a recall option available for RFIs. At this time, that's still in planning and deciding as to whether or not that's going to happen. Right now, we're going to see how it works with the transmittals, make sure everything, get the proper feedback from y'all to make sure it's working like it's supposed to, the way you guys want it to, the way it's supposed to be working. And at that point, we'll relook at it and see which other modules we'll be adding that recall function to. At this time, though, we don't have any ETAs for any of that stuff. Let's see here. Another question. Just a reminder, we are not bringing back return for corrections for transmittals. I know it's much easier when contractors send something that is completely incorrect and shouldn't even be sent, that it's easier to just return it for corrections. Unfortunately, due to requirements and what we were directed to do, we are not allowed to do that. I do apologize for that one, but that is something that is not going to come back. I'm sorry for that. Are there any other questions or anything else? I know one person had a question about some of the recall. I'm hoping the demo answered that one. If it did not, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask those questions now.
I had a question on if you recall a completed transmittal and add new comments, would that contribute to your time for review that's allowed by the contract? So could you possibly go over then? Like if you were allowed 30 days, you completed it, and then the next day you recall it because you forgot something and you complete it again, does that put you over your time?
That is a very good question.
On that particular topic, I think it's a good question and certainly something to think about. I think it's important that everyone understands you should complete your review and do it as thoroughly as possible within the time required to return a submittal. That said, if something happens and down the road it's determined, and this can happen even with submittals that are completely completed, and then later on you find that you didn't catch something that was not compliant with the contract, the contractor is still required to comply. So that is has always been the case, right? If you read the verbiage in our 4025 and in our specs for submittals, contractor is always responsible for performing per the spec, regardless of what was in that submittal. And if it was submitted and approved and it was still incorrect and later found to be that way, they're still required to comply. So I think the big thing here is to remember that that's always the case. And of course, there could always be ramifications of finding that out later. But regardless, if the contractor submitted something that didn't comply with the contract and we didn't point it out until after the 30 days, they're still required to comply. I think the thing to remember is every situation is going to be very probably specific to the contract and to the specifics of that particular issue, and it's certainly something that you're going to want to review with the COR, the ATO, the KO, depending on the issue and the magnitude of the issue. So I do think that this feature, is something that folks have asked for, and it just needs to be sure that it's used appropriately, and hopefully it's not something that's used very often. But when it is, it shouldn't be just someone out there acting on their own. You should be coordinating and discussing with the COR and the ACO to make sure that everything is being done with their awareness and their approval, and anything that might need to be considered along those lines is thought about before you go ahead and do it. And it's probably one of those things that falls in that category of you probably should call the contractor and have a discussion before you do it as well. There's a lot of things that we do that, you write a certain type of serial letter or whatever it is. It's always a good idea to call, bring it up, discuss it with the project manager or the superintendent or the QC, depending on the topic, or have a special meeting for it or whatever before you just send those types of zingers back, and which is certainly a better way to do things from a partnering standpoint as well. So hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, and I think what you just said also answers your question as well. While it is time sensitive, keep in mind that you can send these corrections back. They need to be done. If it's incorrect, as said, it has to be corrected. Let's see here. There's another question in here. Okay, for quality control programs, the contractor needs to be ensuring the details of the contract is followed. It is not the QA responsibility to correct an efficiency, execution, and lack of QC. That's
more of a statement than a question.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
But you're correct. That is what we are paying for.
Exactly. All right, any other questions? All right, we still have a little bit more time, so we'll go ahead and stay on for a few more minutes. If you do have any questions, feel free to either pop it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask.
The contractor submits a sends over a submittal and they forgot to include something, and we don't have that return for correction option. If they email it to us and we upload it for them, does that is there a tracking thing for that as well, or is that acceptable or not acceptable?
Normally that would not be acceptable because RMS does not allow you to put information in for the contractor. In that situation, you could give it a G code, which is just an other, and you could say their contractor forgot to submit something, send it back, they upload it, resubmit it, and everything's fine.
Okay, thank you.
So we do have another question that's in the chat. It is it's pretty much been answered, but I want to clarify with this one. The question is, if we recall the submittal, is this going to be deleted from the submittal register and RMS as well? Not exactly, no. So basically what you're going to be looking at is if you initially QA coded with an A code, then in the submittal register, it's going to show the A code that first time. If you go back and you do a recall for that, what it's going to do is if you change the QA code, the minute you apply that new QA code and sign the 4025 and back out, it is actually going to update the submittal register showing that there's a different QA code. So it's not deleting it. It's just updating it to the actual final code that is applied after all of it is completed. Hopefully that will answer your question. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any other questions. So just a reminder, the demo that we did today is already available on YouTube. You can go to our YouTube channel. You can go to our RMS website. You have links for those demos. There's also a demo for the ability to return a progress payment, even if it's been sent to CFMS, as long as it's not been approved. And then also there's one other demo video that we did, and for the life of me, I can't think of what it is, but go to our website at rms.usace.army.mil, and under the upcoming events, you'll see all of the links for those 3 demos. You can look at them starting today. They are available and ready for you. If you guys have any questions, concerns, or whatever, remember, you can always contact us at the help desk. We are more than happy to help you. You can give us a call at 442-333-1011. Keep in mind, if we don't answer the phone, we do call you back. I promise you. Leave your name, your phone number, and your email address. We will give you a call back and make sure you get taken care of. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and I hope you have a fabulous day.